All right. Welcome back, everybody. So in this video, I want to transition the way that we're thinking about positioning statements a little bit from the way I was talking about it in previous videos. So we've really introduced and discussed that topic so far, thinking in a very product-focused fashion. But we can use, again, this tool that it was developed for branding, for high-level brand strategy, and start to think about it in terms of branding and positioning ourselves and our skill sets. One of the really unique things about a career in sales is that as a salesperson, you're often treated a little bit like a hired gun, right? Like you have this ability to sell products, to engage directly with consumers and translate the benefits of products in the most compelling way possible. And that skill set tends to be pretty transferable from firm to firm. And so salespeople very commonly transfer from firm to firm and kind of use that skill set at will. It's also incredibly common for salespeople to move up within organizations, particularly within the marketing function, because they're so good at translating the benefits of a product to various audiences, whether those be internal or external. Remember our internal versus external customer mindset discussion. So one thing we can do in thinking about a positioning statement is once again twist it ever so slightly, and now think about our target market being some company, or for the entrepreneurs in the metaphorical room, some investor potentially who's thinking about investing in your startup. So for a company or investor, right now we're thinking about positioning ourselves and our own skill sets, and the applicant or startup that can or will point of difference because reason to believe. So the end of this is still going to be very flexible. You're going to need to choose what you think is your strongest point of difference and your strongest reason to believe that would reinforce all of that. But all of the benefits that we get from having a really coherent and consistent and cohesive positioning statement when we're thinking about products or when we're thinking about brands, we can use this same basic template to develop that kind of thinking for ourselves. And I actually use this exercise for a lot of aspects of strengthening people's resumes, strengthening the way that they approach their cover letters, strengthening the way that they put together LinkedIn profiles. All of those things can be really improved if we think about them strategically using this tool. So let's take a really common question that I get, which is, should I have an objective statement at the top of my resume? And my general preference there, particularly for undergrads, is no. I don't think that most people get a lot of benefit from writing that statement. And that's in part because they're rarely read, at least for entry or kind of mid-level jobs. I think they make a little bit of a resurgence once you start looking for more like C-level or upper management type jobs. So it's a little bit flexible depending on the kind of job that you're looking for. If you're an entrepreneur or someone who's trying to get some investment for your startup, then I think maybe it makes a little bit more sense to include one of those that's really carefully crafted. So that goes to the second kind of big piece of my thinking related to these objective statements, which is that often they're just so poorly written that there's really no use in using the very limited space in your resume to write a statement or to include a statement that's so poorly written and doesn't really provide any additional information. And part of that is because the way that people tend to write those statements is they'll say, marketing graduate, with a passion for working in blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, yeah, of course. Like, I can see that. All of that information is already included in your resume. You don't need to include that up at the top. So think through, what is the information that you want to include up at the top that would really differentiate you from the other kinds of people who would be applying for the same position or applying for the same source of funding. And just like in our discussion about these positioning statements generally, when I said, look, this is like a Mad Libs looking exercise, and this would not necessarily, and in fact would almost never be exactly the language that you would use to go direct to some kind of consumer-facing publication. This would almost certainly not be exactly the format that you would use for your objective statement, or that you would use in your cover letter, or that you would use in your kind of those very short bios on LinkedIn where you need to write kind of about section. You wouldn't do exactly this, but it would absolutely inform the kind of thing that you would write there. So, uh, general opinion, don't bother writing those unless you can write a really good one, and otherwise the thing that you think of as your key point of difference, your key strength that is going to make you a better choice than all of the other people competing for this job or this investment. If you don't have another kind of expected way to boost that up to one of the most visible places in your resume, then by all means use this as an excuse to do that. So the same thing applies to. I know I've heard some people tell me that they're getting guidance that, like, yeah, we definitely don't write objective statements anymore. Now we write resume summary statements at the top. Same thing, right? Like whatever we want to call that little section that's at the top of the resume, that's kind of like a very, very brief bio. Whatever you want to call that, only do that if it makes strategic sense. So another thing that you can use this process to do is to start to think through rewriting the individual bullet points that we all have in our resume when we say, whatever the position is and the kind of tasks that you accomplished. Think through the things that we talked about and that you worked on when using branding statements in the more traditional fashion in the previous lectures. So instead of just a very stark bullet point, expand on that a little bit and let's start to rewrite those things as benefits to employers, right? Who is the target for this communication? Well, the target is the company or the investor who you're speaking to here. So just like you should be rewriting whatever objective or resume summary statement at the top so that it is now a positioning statement that is positioning you as better than all of the competition for the needs of the employer or the investor, you can go through and you can rewrite all of the bullet points in your resume so that those things are phrased more in terms of how that bullet point translates directly into a benefit that would be useful for this potential employer or this potential investor. Okay, so another thing that you can do here is start to use this as a little bit of a guiding factor for yourself when you are completing whatever job or student activity related tasks that you might be accomplishing right now, to collect data along the way. One of the things that we learned when putting together our reasons to believe for more traditional uses in previous lectures and examples was that some of the most effective reasons to believe are those that can appeal to numbers and statistics, right? So why should we believe that, a Yeti Rambler does a better job of keeping a beverage hot or cold? Well, one of the first things that you might look for there is, have they done any testing, or is there a guarantee that they can appeal to where they say, we guarantee that it's going to stay hot for X number of hours? And we have that kind of intuition with products. Sometimes people lose that intuition when they start thinking about their own skills. So what kind of numbers, what kind of quantified performance can you point to when you start to think about writing up and discussing and positioning your own skills and talents? You can also start to use this process as you're going through and thinking about, what do I think I am uniquely good at providing to a company who might hire me or to an investor. And if I think that that's my skill set, but I don't have a really good reason to believe, I don't have a really good story to reinforce all of that, let's use it as a goal setting exercise, right? Let's start working and start collecting skills and demonstrations and stories in order to better convey the positioning that we think we have, but it would be nice to be able to maybe communicate in a more evocative or a more concise manner. So you can absolutely use this exercise as a really motivating form of goal setting, and then go out and get done what you need to get done in order to tell the story of your skills and your abilities that you would like to be able to tell. And then the last very quick piece of advice that I'll add in here is that one of the things that people struggle with when they're writing resumes and cover letters or updating their LinkedIn profiles and trying to think through writing these things is that it can feel really braggy. We don't want to come across as arrogant, right? But there is a fine line there. And in my experience, very few of the students who I work with in developing these things are getting close even to the line of braggy. They're usually being unnecessarily modest. So there's modest and not clearly conveying all of the skills and talents that you have. There's this kind of middle area where you're doing the best possible job of highlighting your strengths. And then there's just being too arrogant and really overselling things. People are almost never overselling and arrogant. So what I would say is a nice kind of mental trick that you can use if just starting to frame this using branding isn't quite getting you to the place where you're positioning as effectively, you're selling your skills as effectively as you possibly could, would be to either start to approach all of your past experiences, all of your skills, all of your abilities as if your friend did them. Right? We're really good, we're really comfortable at talking about what amazing friends we have. And that doesn't feel like bragging or like being arrogant. That feels like just sharing with people how incredible our friends are. And so if you can trick yourself into doing that, into talking about yourself like you would talk about your friend, that can be an effective way to start to hit that balance a little bit more clearly. And if that's still not working for you, maybe just ask one of your friends to take a stab at rewriting sections that you might be having trouble with. And then maybe you'll be able to see a little bit more clearly what it is that you tend to do particularly well. So that's a lot, but I think that it is an incredibly useful skill, both for immediately rewriting these things and for thinking through the kinds of information you want to be really careful to make sure you collect along your career in order to write these documents in the future. And then also for thinking through what kinds of things should I invest my time and my talents in right now, because they're going to help me achieve my future goals to write a better version of this document in the future. So have a good day, everybody, and I will see you in the next video.